Sure. Let's begin our Bookseller Chill webinar with Brian Robinson. We're recording these for later viewing if you want to share with your staff. Thank you all for joining us today and making time for self-care, which is so important right now. Today is the fifth in a 6-week series. Each session will last approximately 30 minutes and include concept from Brian's so helpful book, Chill, Turn Off Your Job and Turn On Your Life, followed by what Brian calls simple, short, micro-chiller meditations that will help us relax and restore during this time of great uncertainty. If questions arise during Brian's presentation, please ask them in the chat. Now I'd like to introduce Brian. Brian is a psychotherapist who has built his career on the themes of resilience, work-life balance, and well-being. His research has been featured on numerous national programs. He also hosted the PBS documentary, Overdoing It, How to Slow Down and Take Care of Yourself. He's a contributor to Forbes magazine and Psychology Today. Brian, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Linda Marie. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Today's theme is mindful decision-making. And as Linda Marie said, one of the things I talk a lot about are micro chillers, and those are very simple, easy activities that you can do to become calmer and clear-minded. And they're 5 minutes or less, so they're easy to do. Most of them are, or all of them are portable, free, and they really over time give you a whole different perspective, as well as calm down your nervous system. And I want to talk later. We had a question which from last session, and I'm going to address that in a minute, about how to make this stick. But before we do that, I do want to mention too that on my website, there's a test called How Chill Are You? If you want to know, you can go on my website, take the test, it'll score it automatically, electronically, and you'll get a score. And also on there are my other micro chillers, and there are also a lot of blogs from Thrive Global, whom I write for, Psychology Today, and Forbes. And everything's free. So my website, by the way, is brianrobinsonbooks.com. It's B-R-Y-A-N. So I wanted you to know that. So we're going to start off with a micro chiller. This is one of my favorites. It's the one that I do every day for 5 minutes at least, sometimes more, because when I first started doing it, believe it or not, we all have 5 minutes in a day, right? There are 40 minutes in a day, and we all have 5, even though sometimes we may not put it at the top of our list. So that's what matters. But once you start doing it, at least my experience is, and a lot of the clients I work with say this too, that once you get into it, you don't want to come out. So sometimes you might go for 10 or 15, that's okay. But if you want to commit to 5, then it's something that you can do and not have to spend a lot of time or plan a lot of time to do it in. So this is simply meditation, and you're focusing on your breath. It's really simple. I like it because I don't need an outside source directing me. My breath is directing me. And so the way we're going to do this is, and normally I do it for 5 minutes, but since this is being taped, we'll probably want to do it for 3. And I'm going to do this with you, but I'll also keep my eye on the time. So Linda Marie, I won't put you in that boat. You've been great doing that so far, so you can enjoy the meditation. So what we're going to do is just breathe naturally, and I want you to breathe in through your nose, and then breathe out through your mouth. And that's all we're going to do. And as you're breathing in, I want you to focus on your breath. It's something we don't normally do because it's usually automatic and we don't even pay attention. But as you do this, you'll notice that your parasympathetic nervous system, or the brakes, will calm down your sympathetic nervous system. So you'll also notice that you're going to have thoughts come in. And this is where a lot of people get frustrated and give up. They don't realize that when the thoughts come in, that's part of meditation. And all you do is just acknowledge the thought and come back to the breathing. Or you could even say to the thought, thank you for sharing. But we don't try to get rid of thoughts ever. That's the reverse of what we're trying to do. That creates resistance. All you want to do is just acknowledge the thought, let it go, come back to your breath. And that's going to keep happening. You're going to get distracted by thoughts. That's what meditation is. It's not, you're not doing it wrong. There's no wrong way to do it. The more you do this, the more natural it feels and the more focused you're able to stay with your breath. Okay, we're going to start right now for 3 minutes. Just be aware of the intake of your breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Focus on your breath. When your mind starts to wander, just let that be okay. That's what happens. Just come back to your breath. You might notice you'll get caught up in a whole stream of thoughts and not even be aware of it. And that's okay too. That's just part of the meditation. And once you're aware that you were caught into a thought stream, just again, gently come back and focus on your breath. Okay, we'll bring our attention now back into wherever you are. And I don't know if you experienced that as long or short, but it didn't seem long enough to me, but you can do it longer. And the more you do it, the better it gets, the more muscle memory you have. Anybody want to mention what you're noticing inside right now? There's Mary and there's Kit and there's Susan. It's Linda Marie and Nikki. Mary?
Yeah. Compression. It did seem long.
Did it?
But in an encouraging way, like a lazy river floating in the sun. Well, I also felt when you asked, solar plexus just churned and struggled and showed me what it had been kind of experiencing. So I could recognize where stuck stress had been held. That's
Oh,
mine.
okay. And when you notice where stress is being held, you can just be aware of it. You don't have to do anything except give it attention and just notice. And we talked about the pendulation last time, for those of you who were here, and you can pendulate and focus on a place in your body where there's no stress, where you're completely relaxed, and then come back to the place where you feel the tension, and it will loosen or lessen. Okay. So we're going to talk about mindful decision making. And I want to go back a little bit to the lizard brain. And I mentioned, for those of you who weren't here in the first session, I won't repeat the story, but you can go back and see the first session. When my house burned down when I was 5, my mother ran out of the house and left my 18-month-old sister in the middle of the floor and never left it down. But that was her lizard brain taking her to safety. And that our lizard brain, it's like, you know, when you go to the doctor and they test your reflexes and your leg pops up and I'm kind of surprised every time because I didn't even make it happen. It just happens automatically. The lizard brain's like a reflex, fast as lightning, and it will save you. That's its purpose. It's just like a reflex. But with muscle memory, we can affect it. We can override it. But its purpose is to flood your prefrontal cortex. We call it emotional hijacking. So in an emergency, it will take over, flood your thinking, because it doesn't want you to think. It wants you just to act, right? And so in an emergency, you're not going to think, you're going to just act. And you'll hear people say after, I don't know what I was thinking when I cursed you out. That's not me. I don't know where that came from. Well, that's the lizard brain that lives on top of your spine, and we all have one. Now, you wouldn't change lanes when you're on the interstate without looking in the rearview mirror, I hope. You wouldn't shoot your gun if you have one. I don't have one, but some people do, and that's okay, without aiming. I hope you wouldn't. You would think about it. You would check it out. I hope that when the decisions are being made right now during the time that we're living in, a lot of people are what we call stuck on high because they're afraid, they're worried, not just about, you know, getting COVID-19, but many of you are worried about your businesses and is it going to survive? I would bet you my license that you're all going to be fine. I'm not a fortune teller, and I don't see the future any more than you. But I have felt very calm this whole time because I practice many of these micro chillers, and they keep me in my prefrontal cortex and my wide angle lens. But when you're making a decision, if you're scared and fearful, you're not going to make the best decision for yourself, whether it's your business, your relationship, or anything that's important, your kids or moving or financial investments. You want to make sure you're clear-headed, and you want to make sure that it's coming from what I call the C spot. And I talk about this in my new book. I haven't mentioned the C spot yet, but I want to tell you what that is. Your C spot is a place inside where you're calm and clear, and there are 8 C words, and the reason I call it the C spot is because there are 8 C words that are associated with it. And I'm going to tell you what those are. There's clarity, there's calm, there's compassion, curiosity, connectedness with yourself and with other people, courage, creativity, and I've left one out. I'll have to come back to it. I don't want to spend time thinking about it. But you'll notice that all those C words have this kind of energy. They're kind of open. There's not worry. There's not fretting. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about what I call the internal boardroom. Every one of us has an internal boardroom. in which decisions are made about our lives. Brian Robinson, I'm going to talk about Brian Robinson's boardroom. I'm the CEO. I'm the head of this organization. I sit at the head of, I imagine a round table. You can have any kind of table you want. You don't even have to have a table if you don't want to. You have your boardroom arranged any way you want. The main thing is each of you is the CEO of your life, but you also have a boardroom. And in your boardroom, and this is neurology I'm talking about, it's neuroscience. You have parts or stockholders. Those stockholders are invested in you, and they are part of your lizard brain, and they are hell bent on making sure that your life goes the way it needs to go. Okay? An example, anxiety is a board member, anger is a board member, worry and fear and control and avoidance. I could go on and on and on. Judgment, you know, a lot of us judge ourselves and criticize ourselves. Every single board member, believe it or not, is there to make sure you're okay, to protect you. Here's what happens though. In my boardroom sometimes, when I need to make a decision, if it's something that's scary or something I haven't done before, I might have my worry jump up, kick me out and take over. We call that blending, when a part blends with us. And I don't even know what's happening. And so I worry and I ruminate and I can't sleep. Once you realize this is happening, you can what we call unblend. And unblending it's a very simple thing to do, but the first step is you have to be aware you're blended. So instead of saying I'm an angry person or I'm a worrywart or I'm a control freak, when we use those terms, we're identifying with the part instead of separating from it. So you want to say things like, I have an angry part, and if you say this to your spouse, by the way, if you're upset, your spouse is going to hear it. They're not going to get as reactive if you can say, you know, I've got this part of me that's angry from what you said. Because what they're hearing, it's not you. If you say, I am really angry at you, that's a whole different ballgame, what you're communicating. But first, you've got to do the separation or the unblending. So when the lizard brain sees catastrophe, then it's going to be quick and you're going to make an impulsive decision. But if you wait a little bit and get it to relax, the worry or the catastrophe, and see what my hand is doing automatically, just move it back. And I call this the AAA approach. And I know I'm throwing a lot at you at one time, but I'm going to give you a review at the end so you'll have all this down on paper. The AAA, I'm going to give you an example. And this is a simple example. It's not a life decision, but it's an important decision. I was in it, you know, I live in Asheville, and I was on 240 one day about 2 years ago. I got off the ramp on Charlotte Street, and I was getting off. Had been a woman in a little red car in front of me. And I just casually looked over, and she gave me the finger and this ugly look, and I was startled. I thought, what in the world is that about? And then I saw my anger. He got up from his chair, and he was coming to take over. And he says, tell to go to, and I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. That's not who I want to be in the world. Now, I couldn't have done this years and years ago. This is something I practiced. And so when I did that, the anger started to calm down, because here's what I did. We call it the AAA approach. I was aware he was coming and he was going to blend with me. And if he had, I would have probably yelled something ugly and given her the same gesture. But because I caught him, I was aware and I acknowledged him. That's the second A. Acknowledgement is when you can even talk to the part and say, oh, see, you're here. What's going on? You have a dialogue with it. And this is cutting edge psychotherapy and psychology and neuroscience, by the way, because as you do that, it calms the part down. The part realizes, and this may sound strange, oh, there's somebody else here. I don't have to handle this. There's somebody else here who's smarter and more powerful than me who can handle this situation. And then I allow it to be there. I don't try to get rid of it. I don't fight it. I don't steamroll over it. I just let it be there. And then guess what? I find myself in the C spot. I'm feeling calm. I'm clear on what just happened on the inside of me. I start to see my psychological landscape, which is incredible once you have that kind of deeper awareness of what's going on inside. And the best thing of all is that day, it was an autumn day. It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And I remember I felt like I just made a home run because I felt so good. I stayed in my C spot, those C words, and I dawdled along and had a great day. Now, years ago, that would have made me feel bad because I would have had the cortisol and the adrenaline, and I would have just, how dare somebody do that to me? That really makes me, that I'm all caught up in something and I will never know that person or see them again. And it's not worth it. So the boardroom, and you can practice this with little things and big things. That was a decision I made. But I was able to make a reflective decision because my lizard brain, if it had actually taken over the anger, then I would have done something I would have regretted later on. So whether it's a simple decision of how you react or respond to somebody, or whether it's about what are you going to do about your business, or how are you going to face the pandemic that we're all involved in, you want to make sure you do it from your C spot. They're actually, in my new book, I have 20 of those C words, but I usually just use 8 just to get going. And you'll start to notice if you just do this with little things between now and the next week, you'll start to notice you automatically end up in your C spot. It's not a place you have to try to get to. All you have to do is just be aware of the AAA whenever you're triggered. If you're angry or hurt or upset, then you'll, if you focus on blending with the part, you will automatically end up in your C spot. And that's, you're in your prefrontal cortex, you're clear, you're making good decisions, you feel good inside, you feel calm and relaxed. Okay, Linda Marie.
I was wondering, when you were talking about the people on your board, is there a way, a lot of them represented darker emotions or, potential. I wondered about inviting board members in that are not, just if there's a way also about inviting positive, maybe lighter emotions or more positive ones in.
The reason they're a little darker is because they, as a group, are lizard brain, and they're really not bad, but they're survival parts. Like my anger, the reason my anger is there is to help me fight off somebody who's threatening me. So they're all based on threat. The positives all come from the C spot. And that's a good question because the 8 C words I gave you are just beginning words. And we use the 8 C's just so you can start to get a sense of what that is. But it also includes celebration, joy. It doesn't have to be a C word. Happiness, love, of course, compassion is one of the C words. That may be the one I left out. So that's why there's this distinction that it's the reflexive parts, or the parts of us that took care of us when we were young, basically. And I might have a bigger control part than you, Linda Marie, and you might have a bigger perfectionistic part than me. But whether or not that's true, it depends on how we grew up and what happened to us. Those parts come in as we're developing over time to protect us. They're like a scab on a wound. The wound is the vulnerable flesh, and the scab forms to protect the flesh. My anger is a scab. My control is a scab. It's protecting me from harm, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Okay. I also wanted to read, there's a question last week. I don't think it, it's from Chris. And she says some really nice things about how much she's enjoying the sessions. And she said, I do try out the suggestions, but after a few days, they seem to fade. And then I'm reminded again when we meet on Thursday. Could you ask Brian if this is normal? It seems counterproductive to work hard at these micro chillers, but any guidance to how to practice may be helpful. Well, I want to say, yes, it is normal. Remember when you learned to drive a car, at least I'll tell you what happened to me. I remember thinking, I had a stick shift. I had to think of every little move I made, put the key in, turned on the motor. It took me a few minutes to even just get going, right? But then now when I get in my car, I don't even think about, I'm thinking about something else sometimes. I'm not even thinking about that. It's called muscle memory. So it takes a little bit of time to develop the muscle memory in order for this to become automatic. Scientists call this the resilient zone, and I wanted to, maybe I'll send this to Linda Marie and she can share it with all of you. I have a diagram. Neuroscientists call it the resilient zone. So the more you practice the micro chillers, it's not just a one-shot deal. The more you practice, the wider your resilient zone gets. But it does take time. It's like when I went to the gym, when I first started working with my personal trainer, I didn't have my muscles built up in the first day or even week. But now I can do things, I can lift my own body weight now that I couldn't have done this years ago. So that same muscle memory in our creating neural pathways in the brain takes time to develop. So don't be discouraged by that. So the resilient zone, some people get stuck on high, and I'll get this to Linda Marie and she can give you a copy. And it shows you what the normal resilient zone is, but sometimes, like in times of crisis and emergency with COVID-19, a lot of people are stuck here and they can't get back down. These micro chillers help you get back into that place. And so the more you practice, if you, and when I say practice, I'm not talking about hours and hours every day. I'm talking about if you have a regular practice, 5 minutes or more a day, after a while, you're going to start, this is what happened to me. It's like, oh, wow, I reacted totally different to that situation. I was actually shocked as I started to see that I didn't have that automatic reaction as much. So don't give up, stay in there and you'll start to notice the change. But it does take dedication and a little bit of practice. Okay. Do we have time to do another little micro chiller?
That would be a wonderful way to end, yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is we'll do the AAA. Think about something, think of a part of you. It could be your worry. It could be your anger. It could be, there's no bad part. They're all trying to help us. It could be your judgment. It could be your critic. It could be your anxiety. It could be you're avoiding something, your procrastination. So just some part of you, this is not you, but some board member in your boardroom. And once you have it, here's what I want you to do. You can leave your eyes open or closed. Sometimes it helps to close your eyes to really focus on that part. And just kind of imagine it. You can see it as a visually. You can feel it as a sensation in your body. It can be outside of you, around you somewhere. Everybody has a different way of experiencing these parts. And just become aware. That's the first A. And I'm doing that too right now. And now, once you're aware that it's there, acknowledge it on the inside. And the way you acknowledge it is what I'm doing is I've got a little bit of dread that I'm aware of about something. And so I'm saying, hey, dread, what's up? That's all I'm doing. I'm just acknowledging it. And sometimes you will notice if you practice this, these parts will talk back to you, or they will reveal information that has been on your mind that you weren't even totally conscious of. That's what mindful decision making is. So as you acknowledge it, just talk to it a little bit. I see you're here. What's going on? Or how are you doing? You can say whatever you want to say. There's no set dialogue. And then the third A is allowing it to be there. And what we're doing is saying allowing it to be not in your board member, not your CEO seat, but in its own seat. around the table. Just let it be okay if you can. And sometimes this takes practice, to let your worry be there. Sometimes we fight it or we try to get rid of it. And this is all about letting it be there. It's like if you're in a riptide, you know that you're not going to fight it. That will kill you. It will drown you. This is the same concept. We just let it be there. Allow it. And if you can allow it, you'll notice some calm. And maybe some clarity. And sometimes even some compassion for the part, depending on what it is. And so that's pretty much it. You can see how after you practice it, you can do it really quickly. Aware, acknowledge, and allow. Okay.
Thank you so much for this session. If anyone has questions for our final session, which is next week, just email me at lindamarie@cebaweb.com and I'll pass them on to Brian. And I'll keep sending you links as Brian sends them to me between sessions for you to think about.
And if there's anything they would like for me to go over, if any of you just send that to Linda Marie. If you anything you want me to repeat or talk a little bit more about, I'll be happy to do that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Brian. And thank you everyone else for being here today. I hope your week goes really well.
Have a great week.